Well, thank you so much for having me. Josh, I have to ask you a question. Will you stand up for a moment with me? What, you've learned all about the Constitution. You've learned a lot about the principles of freedom. What does it mean, from your perspective, as a 17-year-old young man, what does it mean to be free?
Let me go check for you, okay?
It means that when I grow my family, when I become a father, that I can support them and not have to worry about the government hurting them.
Very good. You know, it's important that we understand what it means to be free. And I want to engage with you a little bit today. I want to debate with you. I want to discuss with you some things that are very important to us with the Academy and what it is we're trying to accomplish. We just returned from Times Square. We met with the individuals out on Occupy Wall Street. Those kids are incredibly dense. Had a great time with those folks. We spent, a couple weeks ago, we were in Philadelphia. We've been out to Colorado, New Mexico, and we're just ecstatic to be a part of this movement with you in really restoring America, no longer just paying lip service to what it means to be free, no longer just paying lip service to the answers that can really solve the problems that this country's dealing with. The answer is right in front of us. It is literally right in front of us. And you have people telling us that the Constitution is the problem. From D.C. all the way down to your local dog catcher, they're telling us that the Constitution is the problem. It's the reason why we're experiencing all the ills. And we've made it very clear in any number of forms that the Constitution is not the problem. It is emphatically the answer. It's getting back to those principles that make America exceptional, and it's getting back to us holding those individuals accountable, really holding them accountable. So we want to stop, along with you, paying lip service to change and really making this happen. Now, I want to take you back for just a moment. And as I take you back, I want you to think about what you think are the greatest problems we're dealing with as a country. And I would like to hear from one or two of you. But as I do, I hear someone already yelling, Obama. But think about this as I tell you this. You know, most of what Americans know about the Constitution is in fact wrong. I think you know that just in having conversations with your neighbors, with your coworkers, with your family members. And I teach out at the college in Phoenix. And it's not uncommon to bring my students in on the first day of class and just have a very simple conversation with them about freedom. Rights. Where do our rights come from? I started a class this last week and I asked, where do our rights come from? What do you think it is that the majority of my students will say? From 17 to 90, the majority will say our rights come from government. When I ask them the question, what is more important to you? Public safety or individual liberty? I had 32 students in my class just a few semesters ago. 30 of those students said that public safety was more important than individual liberty. Right? This is going on in the classrooms throughout America. And these are adults. I'm not talking about young kids. These are adults coming through the college classroom. And now I've got to spend 16 weeks with them, disabusing them of those notions, helping them understand that the things that they believe in aren't consistent with the real world, that they in fact will enslave you. They don't allow you to be free. And so I'm taking you back for a moment to 1776. You know that the Declaration of Independence was not signed on July 4, 1776. Most of the signing that took place happened in August, leading all the way into November. July 4th was the day that it was announced and published that this document would be signed. But as they come together, there's two individuals that are very impressive. Elbridge Gerry and Benjamin Harrison. They are both signers of the Declaration of Independence. And Benjamin Harrison has an issue with his waistline. He's a bit overweight. And Elbridge Gerry is rather skinny. And he looks over to Benjamin Harrison and he says, you know what, Ben? He says, you're lucky You're lucky because you're fat. Because when they hang us for what we're doing here, you will die a rather quick death. Me, on the other hand, being small and skinny, will waver in the wind for at least an hour before I die. See, these people, this is a true story, by the way. These people found humor, but they were also dedicated to something so much bigger than themselves. And I have to be honest, let me share my heart with you. These are my favorite meetings to come to. Republican women, because you guys don't play around. I love this, and I have to be honest, I mentioned this to my team, that when I look into your eyes, that I see hope for this country, that I see that we can still change things. But you know what? We're going to have to engage like we've never engaged before. We're going to have to do things that make us incredibly uncomfortable. We're not just doing it for future generations. We're doing it for people that have gone before us. We have a huge battle that needs to be fought. And it's going to literally take you and me pledging our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor to do that. Before I sit down today, I want to tell you about a part of my plan that I believe is going to restore America. I want to share that with you, and I want you to be a part of it. But before we go there, let's engage here. As you think about the greatest problem that this country is dealing with today, what would that be for you?
Liberal judges.
Wow. I'm coming back to you. So, Daryl, or Carol, my eyes ignore. Carol, how is that a problem?
Taken away from us.
How is it being taken away?
Through the courts, through the Congress, and definitely through our president.
How is Congress doing this?
They're doing nothing.
By doing nothing. So you're concerned that individual liberty is at stake, and that those three branches of government are creating that problem. Who said the liberal judges? Who was that? That was you. Why are you concerned?
Because the judges are ruling from the bench and not adhering to, they're interpreting the Constitution the way they were brought up through schools that are so liberal with liberal professors that they are exactly.
You just pointed at me.
We were just making a point of young people coming into your classroom, and they have been so brainwashed, even in our elementary grades, to the need for everything is about themselves. There is nothing to do with the outside world today about sacrifice and responsibility, that by the time they become voters, they are so consumed with themselves that the only way they want to vote is what's in it for me.
Now you've all heard Justice Ginsburg, right? She's one of the 9 scorpions in a bottle, U.S. Supreme Court. Yes. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a.k.a. Darth Vader Ginsburg. You heard the comment that she made, right? She was asked about the Egyptian Constitution. And she said that she felt that in drafting that Constitution, they should not look to the U.S. Constitution. They should look to the South African Constitution. Yes. And the reason, number one, that she gave for not looking to the U.S. Constitution was because the U.S. Constitution is too old. Really? Because something is too old, it suddenly becomes invalid? I mean, here is the bottom line. When we look at our Constitution, this is incredibly important to understand. It is a special document. It has survived the test of time. But it hasn't survived the test of time for reasons that the media thinks they understand. Think about this. Since 1822, Brazil has had 7 constitutions. Poland has had 7 constitutions since 1921. Russia has had 4, since 1918. Afghanistan has had 5 in the 20th century alone. France has had 15 since our one. There is a reason why this Constitution stands strong today. It is in jeopardy. There is no question it is in jeopardy. But there's a reason why this document has survived the test of time. Limited government, enumeration of rights, separation of powers, Republican form of government. It is the only Constitution that has ever been created that was based on a creed, and that creed says we are endowed with certain unalienable rights. It was a belief that our rights came from our humanity or from our Creator. And that would be the philosophy of our government. Think about how different and profound that is. Right? Ask that to your politician or your representative next time. What is the philosophy of our government? 99% of the people sitting in government could not tell you the philosophy of our government. And it tells you where we've come and where we're going. The philosophy of our government is found in our Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is the philosophy of government. And now think about this. Someone mentioned earlier progressives. I want to teach you about the battle that we're fighting against. Because we've talked individual liberty is at stake. We've talked about the liberal judges. Someone mentioned President Obama. These are problems. But my hope is that you recognize that these are merely symptoms of the problem. The real problem in this country is we the people. We are the problem. And think about what's going on in Washington, D.C. Think about what's going on at the state level. Think about what's going on at your local level. When you have a people that are elected by us who don't understand the governing document, there's a very simple reason why that is. We the people. We haven't set the standard high enough. And so what we see in D.C. is nothing more and nothing less than a reflection of the people. Until we start understanding this document, until we stop just revering it and start reading it and applying the document, we will see no real change in this country. It's that simple. I mean, think about this for a moment. This document is a trust. Any lawyers here? Anybody willing to admit they're a lawyer? well, think about it. What is your name? Linda, you're my lawyer. And Linda, I have $100,000 that I want to put in trust. And I want you to be the trustee. I am the trustor. She is the trustee. And we sign out, and I outline for her exactly what I want her to do with this $100,000. I sign on the dotted line. She signs on the dotted line. And you as the trustee, what do you do with that? With that money, with that trust?
I do what you outlined on the paper.
No, that's actually not what you did. I saw the Mercedes that you rolled up in. See, you took, there it is, the $100,000. You took $50,000 and you bought yourself a new car. Right? See, in our culture, though, if she were to do something like this, if she were to violate a trust such as this, she has literally stolen something that doesn't belong to her. And in our culture, she would go to jail. But think about this. We, you, me, we are the trustors of this document called the Constitution. Who are the trustees? The people we elect. They are the trustees. And they're obligated. They take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And yet when they violate the Constitution, they get to keep their job, they get reelected, they keep their pensions, and nobody says a word about it. There's something terribly, terribly, terribly wrong with a culture that says if you steal an individual's money, you will go to jail. But if infringe on a people's liberty by disregarding the governing document, we will pay you even more money. There's something terribly wrong with this. And the only way that we fix this, ladies and gentlemen, is by changing the culture. That's the only way you change this problem, is changing the culture. See, the progressives knew 100 years ago that they could not stand up in front of a group of people and sell you their bill of goods. They couldn't, because 100 years ago people knew better. It didn't pass the smell test. We stopped. But they knew that if they could take the culture, if they could take the schools, they could start to convince the hearts and minds of Americans. What I'm telling you is that if you want to change this problem, we must stop fighting as a first priority the election cycle battle. And we must start fighting first and foremost the battle for the hearts and minds of Americans, the cultural battle. That is what must happen. Now think about this. I want to take you back for just a moment. And I want you to understand what it is we're fighting against. Woodrow Wilson says this. You tell me what you think is wrong with this. Woodrow Wilson says, if you want to understand the Declaration of Independence, don't read the preface. Listen, if you want to understand the Declaration of Independence, don't read the preface. That's a president of this country in 1913 telling the American people that if you want to understand the Declaration of Independence, don't read the preface. What was he telling you? He was telling you that the most important part of that document was the grievances outlined. It had nothing to do with the fact that they were outlining that men are born free. See, that's what's going on in this culture today. Because the Declaration of Independence is the why. The Constitution is the how. But if you can remove the why, if you can remove the foundation, you can make the Constitution anything you want to make it. And so here you have Woodrow Wilson, FDR, LBJ, all preaching the same message, that the preface is not important. In fact, follow me. Do you know what progressives believe? See, I have to give you a little background here as we talk about progressives. And I honestly wish we had more time to really move through this. But I come from a family where my dad, as liberal as they come, my mother, as conservative as they come. My dad was a college professor. My mother was an attorney. And can you imagine the conversations we had around the dinner table? My dad, pro-choice, anti-death penalty. My mom, pro-life, hang 'em high. Right? So we have these conversations growing up, right? And I respected my dad greatly. I didn't buy off on most of his views, but he made so much of what I am today, and this is why. He taught this to all of his kids from a very young age. He that doesn't understand his opponent's argument doesn't truly understand his own. The person who really wants to have an impact in a culture must understand the adversary. My dad was a progressive. I understand what it is that they believe. I understand, and I know you understand, what Woodrow Wilson means, or what FDR means when he says necessitous men are not free. When FDR stands up and says, you may think that men are born free, but the reality is deep down in your heart of hearts, you know they're not. It's important to understand why they say those things. It's important for us to understand as conservatives the battle that we are facing off against. And here is the foundation that you must understand as we face off with these people. Progressives do not believe that men are born free. They don't believe that men are born free. But those of us that are constitutional originalists, that believe in a strict construction of the document, believe that men are born free. That's where we start to part ways. So think about this. When you pull out of here tonight, or this afternoon, you're going to take a left-hand turn, you're going to take a right-hand turn, you're going to take another right-hand turn, and then you're going to turn left. And I'm going to ask you, why did you go left, right, right, and then left? And you're going to say, because that's what I wanted to do. I'm free to do that, and that's how I chose to get from point A to point B. But do you know what the progressive will tell you? He will say that metaphorically, the reason why you pulled out of here and went left, right, right, and then left again is because you are a slave. You are a slave to an addiction. You don't have adequate housing. You don't have sufficient health care. You don't have food on the table. And because you made those decisions, you truly are not free, and you can only become free when government intervenes. When government enacts laws to unshackle you from those things that bind you from birth. This is what they believe. So does this not make more sense when you look at the current administration who's doing all the things that they're doing? When you push them, this is what they believe. And all I'm suggesting is I have seen liberal after liberal, progressive after progressive come into my classrooms, and I'm going to engage them. We are going to engage in hardcore debate for 16 weeks until I turn their philosophy on their heads. And if the school wants to get rid of me, it's a public college. They want to get rid of me, they can do. I've been there for 10 years. They haven't gotten rid of me yet. But if they wanted, that's fine. But we're going to talk about both sides of the issues. That's something that's not being done in our schools. Let's let our kids decide. Let's let these college students hear both sides of the argument and let them make their own decisions. Because my experience in the college classroom is when both sides are presented, 99% of the time, they will choose more freedom, less government intrusion, even if it means that I may fail. 99% of the time, I have had students come in that were here illegally in this country. I've had students come in that hate Sheriff Arpaio, that are Hispanic, and believe that there's an agenda. But leave at the end of 16 weeks saying, how can I be a part of what you're doing on the outside? I want to be a part of this freedom movement. I want to be a part of changing this country because I now see that there is a big problem. And that's where it really comes down to us. As we talk about this Constitution, how are we doing on time? Let me just, because of course I can't leave without giving a little lesson on what the Constitution is. In fact, I'd like to give you something that I think will give you some incredible ammunition to begin fighting this battle. It's something that I have preached, if you will, for the last several years. Our goal with the American Academy is to change the dynamic of the discussion going on in this country. We want to change the conversation. We want to make the Constitution relevant. We want to force this discussion through national media, TV, radio, newspaper, school boards, going out to Congress. In fact, we're going out to Congress in Washington, D.C. in March. And we're going to be talking with congressmen while we're out there. We intend to bring a full-fledged assault on those who choose to disregard those things that make America exceptional. We want to go after those people. We want to go after those people who don't understand what makes this country different and who don't understand the principles that they've taken an oath to uphold and defend. So if I could just give you just a small tidbit of what it is that we're doing. I mean, I've developed over 10 8-hour seminars. You're getting the tip of the iceberg today. 10 8-hour seminars that I've developed on the Constitution. And we intend to have an impact. We will have an impact. I want you to think about the Constitution. And what I'm about to teach you, many of you may already know. But I am of the belief that if you understand what I'm about to tell you, you will know more than 99% of all Americans about this document. Does anybody know how many articles are in the Constitution? I'm mad right now. 7 articles. There are 7 articles in the Constitution. Does anybody know how many amendments? 27 amendments. Not as one of my students mentioned not too long ago, 135. There are not 135 amendments. And I don't remember how well he did in class, but he was guessing 135 amendments. Does anybody know what Article 1 speaks to? Legislative branch. Does anybody know what Article 2 speaks to? Executive branch. Does anybody know what Article 3 speaks to? Judicial branch. I'm not going to go through 4, 5, 6, and 7 today, because I want you to think about how powerful this is. If you understand that the Constitution is a limited document, it's a document that limits power. See, so when Jim Clyburn's being interviewed by Andrew Napolitano, he's the 3rd highest ranking Democrat in the country, and he's asked the question by Andrew Napolitano, where in the Constitution do you have the authority to enact something like health care? And he responds by saying most of what we do in D.C. is probably not permitted by the Constitution. Right? But before he said that, he said something even more profound. He said, where in the Constitution does it say that we can't? That was his response on national TV. Where in the Constitution does it say we can't? And most Americans, their eyes would glaze over and they say, yeah, where in the Constitution does it say that we can't? See, this is a guy who took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. Article 1, Section 1 says all legislative powers herein granted are vested in Congress. And in case he forgot, or in case he skipped over that, we have a matching bookend called the 10th Amendment. And it says those powers that we haven't given to you through this document remain with the states. Right? So unless you can justify some sort of authority that we've given you, you can't do it. So imagine how powerful this is. We do this every day. When I'm discussing any given issue about what Congress is doing, I change the dynamic of the discussion by asking, where in Article 1 does Congress have the authority to do this? When the President signs 23 executive actions, and somebody wants to talk about that, I change the dynamic of the discussion by saying, where in Article 2 does it speak to what he's doing today? When the Supreme Court decides that they're going to do A, B, and C, I change the dynamic of the discussion by saying, let's go to Article 3 of the Constitution. This is how you change a country. It is our only choice if we're talking about going back to limited government. We must go on the offensive. You know what conservatives do pretty well? We play defense. We play defense incredibly well. Oh, you want to change this whole, you want to put up a wall down at the border? Oh, you're a racist. No, I'm not a racist. You are a racist. No, I promise I'm not a racist. I mean, I have friends that are black. See, we play defense. It's time to go on the offensive. It's time to start mandating that they justify their positions. They've got to justify why they think. This is a multifaceted approach that we're involved with. We are done playing checkers, because we play checkers incredibly well too. I move, and I wait for the opposite side to move. Where are they going to move now? Okay, then I'll move. No. This is a complex game of jiu-jitsu. Multifaceted attack, where we all come together and we say, what is it that I do well? And am I willing to pledge my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor? Am I willing to stop revering this thing and boots on the ground? It's time. It's time. 2013, this is a great time. And this Constitution, this is a beaver trap. Would you set this for me? I want to show you how this represents our Constitution. This represents our Constitution here. Are you okay? No, you're not doing it right. There you go. This represents our Constitution here. Constitution right here. And while you're here, I got all kinds of props in here. We could go from... All right, are you ready? Would you put your hand in there? Why not?
That's because my mom didn't raise no dummy.
Put it in there. Put it right there. That's the pin. Sorry about that pin there, Mike. This is the Constitution. When we start recognizing, this is a Shaneism, by the way, you want to write this one down. When you start recognizing that the Constitution is a complex maze of booby traps designed to stop tyranny in its tracks, you'll start to make some changes in this country. The Constitution is a complex maze of booby traps designed to stop tyranny in its tracks. But what we've done wrong in this country is we no longer engage the traps. We let Congress do whatever it is they want to do. We don't hold them accountable. And so my time is about up. But Mike Carroll is going to spend 2 minutes talking with you here real quick. But I want to leave you with this. December 31st of 1776. Washington had lost battle after battle. A week before, on Christmas Day, he won one of the more significant battles, Battle of Trenton. And he lined up his 2,500 troops. Remember, months before, he had 25,000 troops. 1 in 10 had the courage to be with him on Christmas Day. 2,500 troops are lined up. And he asked, who will stay another month longer? Does anybody know how many of those troops, when he initially requested that they stay, agreed to stay? 0. They weren't being given the resources they needed, the things that were important for them to carry on. Washington rides off on his horse and comes back a short time later. And I want you to imagine that you were there. Because Washington's not just talking to his troops, he's talking to people in 2013. And he says this. He says, "My brave fellows, you've done more than I've asked you to do and more than could reasonably be expected. But your country is at stake. Your wives, your houses, and all that you hold dear. You've worn yourself out. You've worn yourselves out with hardships. We know not how to repay you. But if you will agree to stay for 1 month longer, you will have an opportunity to render your service to the cause of liberty that you could never do under any other circumstance. You will have a chance to render your service to the cause of liberty that you could not do under any other circumstance. In other words, generations to come will envy you. I'm telling you this. Generations to come will envy 2010 to 2020. Because your grandchild is going to be standing up in front of the classroom, giving a report on what happened. We may come out losers. I'm convinced we win. But they're going to stand up and say, my grandfather was a part of that. My great-grandmother was a part of this. They refused to sit on the sidelines. They chose to stand up for something bigger than themselves. They chose to pledge their life, their fortune, their sacred honor. They chose to give up conveniences to make this country better for us. 2013 is a big year. We have a town hall meeting coming up that we want you to be a part of. It's going to be down in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm going to let Mike talk a little bit about that, but I want to tell you this. I'm honored to link arms with people like you who truly care. I am prepared and have pledged my life, my fortunes, whatever that may be, and my sacred honor to this cause. I am dedicating my life to this. I have 6 children. My oldest is 17, my youngest is 3. My kids are involved with this. They are on the front lines with me. My wife is on the front lines with me. And I know you are as well. And I'm honored to be fighting this battle with you. Thank you so much.